What are the main findings of the Arab Democracy Index report number 4? I think the main finding is that in spite of the turbulence and insecurity that we see since 2011, the buds of democracy are growing, and that is that across the region, the index reveals that the seeds of change are propagating and have propagated. And I think more positive even is the fact that the country's rulers themselves are responding to demands because they feel they are on the defensive and out of the concern of survival of their own regimes. I think it is a positive result because it shows that, in fact, yes, democracy is beginning to flower in the 9 countries that we analyzed and studies. We have ranked those countries into 3 categories, and the types of countries in each category are the following. First category are the countries that underwent revolutions, uprisings followed by regime change. The second is countries that have been affected by the uprising in neighboring states. If we take Morocco, for example, affected by Tunisia, Algeria being affected by Tunisia, if we take Jordan being affected by Egypt, and so on. And the third category are the countries that have taken a slow reform approach, that is, the countries that gradually are changing from the top. The leadership itself is introducing reforms. And among these 3 categories, it is not necessarily the countries that underwent regime change that come at the top. It is not the countries that have performed best that are in fact the most democratic. So I think these are the surprises of this index. Why does Morocco rank first in terms of change of the performance in this index? I think it's mainly because Morocco has taken a gradual course of reforming and changing the system from the top, i.e. responding to demands from the society with a controlled process as opposed to uncontrolled upheaval and change. The main finding is that in a country like Morocco, the progress, although gradual and limited, is not counterbalanced or countered by negative effects of instability as we see in Tunisia or in Egypt. So it shows that a reform process is in fact ideally what should happen, what societies would like to see, because it is the least costly for society, because there is no insecurity or very little insecurity, very little instability, very little loss of sources of revenue and income and so on. So ideally we would like to see gradual process of reform across the region, but unfortunately this is not the case, as we know. Why did we have to exclude some countries, Syria, Saudi Arabia and Yemen, and had only 9 countries there? Now the 9 countries covered are key countries for the region. The choice is also a mix of countries that underwent change and those that did not. The countries like Syria and Saudi Arabia are 2 countries that we did have in our list of countries covered. The data was collected in the case of Syria, but the part on surveys, public opinion surveys, was not possible, and therefore we could not rank Syria. We could not cover all of the indicators. Same with Saudi Arabia. Most of the data was collected. It was not possible to finish. So both countries are covered with a qualitative analysis, taking the same criteria to measure performance, but the ranking was not possible because we didn't have all the elements to do so. Why is the index, the Arab Democracy Index, different from other reports produced by some international organization? I think, first of all, it is because this is an Arab report. It's produced entirely by a group of Arab social scientists who have special access to data and to information inside their own countries. The Democracy Index also has a unique approach in that it provides quantitative analysis that is not limited to observing the evolution of political institutions or public opinions as other reports do, but rather it investigates citizens' perceptions and concrete behaviors, as well as the social and economic impact of regime changes on the daily lives of the population. So it is a tool that allows a precise overview of the most salient effects of the 2011 street movements. And this differentiates it from reports by other international institutions. We take the index and make recommendations. What kind of recommendations do we make? We make general recommendations for all countries, and I would say one general recommendation across the board is about the need, the urgent need to give special attention and special budgets for education. And a second one is the need for oversight over security institutions. In each of these countries, whether they have undergone change or not, we have a very powerful and overwhelmingly powerful security sector that lacks oversight by by parliament, by civil society, by civil institutions. So these are among the general recommendations. But then we have a set of specific recommendations for each country, and this ranges from recommendations about options in public policies, focus on certain sectors and certain areas of state services to the society, as well as suggestions for the creation of certain institutions, the enactment of certain laws that are important to really bring change in some critical areas, and that happens, and that we do on each country. Can we be optimistic about the future of the Arab region? It is obviously very difficult at the moment to say so, given the turbulence and the instability and the insecurity that has certainly grown across the region. Yet, I do say confidently that this report conveys a message of optimism, because if we look at long trends, and this is what the report looks at, it measures the pace of change, and over 10 years, which is or 9 years now, this activity of producing indicators have shown that yes, we are moving towards better governance, and particularly since 2011, more participation by society. And what we discover now is that pressure on governments has been exerted by international institutions, international financial institutions, European partners, Western partners in general, but that in fact what really makes governments change is street protest, is pressure from below, is pressure from civil society. And I think Arab societies have understood that they can have real effect, real impact on their governments, and that this is how they can obtain change. That is the strongest message. Pressure from outside does not do what societies can do to bring about change.